I've got some really good news and some really bad news for you. I'm going to start with the good news. Those of you that have an 8BitDo Ultimate 2C controller, you are going to want to update your firmware because it now allows more of its features to be detected by Steam, including the 2 bonus buttons, the gyro, and rumble. And Valve is getting involved, but I will talk more about that later. 8BitDo is known for making some pretty great third-party controllers for Switch, for Xbox, and PC. I have a huge 45-minute long video where I go through the plethora of controllers that I have here in the NerdNest, and I'll say the 8BitDo controller that I have here ranks pretty high on that list. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out at the end of this video. I will say, however, it's easy to get confused as to which controller I'm talking about here because 8BitDo makes so many of them. I was really excited when I saw this post because I have an 8BitDo Ultimate controller, but it turns out I don't actually have the right one. I have the one that has the charging cradle, which is one of my favorite controllers, and that's the 8BitDo Ultimate 2.4 GHz controller. This one that we're talking about today is the 2C. Can I just say 8BitDo, figure out the name of the naming convention for your controllers because it is ridiculously confusing. By the way, I'm Bill and welcome to the NerdNest. I post videos about gaming news, hardware reviews, tutorials, as well as my weekly podcast. So if that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing. It's free and I'm closing in on 90,000 subscribers. It would be amazing to get there this year. I've got a bunch of gameplay trailers for games that are running in the background of this video. If you see something that you're like, add it to your wish list and let me know in the comments down below that like button which games looked the coolest to you. Now back to what I was saying. Now that we know which controller we're talking about, what I like about the Ultimate series of controllers is how comfortable they are. They feel really good in the hand, and they have Hall effect sticks. If you don't know about Hall effect, it uses magnets instead of potentiometers to register inputs, so they tend to be less prone to drift than traditional joysticks over time. They also have Hall effect triggers. Their buttons work really well, their D-pads are really great. They're just good all-around controllers. They aren't perfect, but they're good. One thing I really wish that they had is capacitive joysticks like the Steam Deck and the HoriPad Steam controller. This allows you to have the gyro turn on when you're touching the sticks, which is better than needing to use a button to reset your view. And I think that the demand for these controllers is about to go up for 2 reasons. Number 1, Valve has now confirmed that they are looking into fully supporting these controllers using Steam input, which means Steam will recognize them as the controller that they actually are. A lot of times, third-party controllers get recognized as either a Nintendo Switch controller or an Xbox controller. And when they're detected as Xbox controllers, they lose the ability to use gyro, which sucks. But then you get analog triggers, which is great. When they're detected as Switch controllers, well, then you get the gyro, but then you lose the analog triggers because Nintendo Switch controllers are only digital triggers. But with the new firmware that 8BitDo released, they're now recognized as their own thing, which means the analog triggers, rumble, gyro, extra buttons are all going to be available all at once without needing to switch back and forth between Nintendo Switch style controller input methods and Xbox input methods. Which brings me to number 2. Valve has recently said that they are currently working to get the UI to properly reflect this controller as its own. This was posted by a Valve employee over at the Steam forums. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Steam input or you find it intimidating, I have a bunch of tutorials here on my channel about how to use it. I'll link them down below so that you can check them out if you want. I have to say that I love that Valve is working so hard to make Steam input support for so many different controllers. Now for the bad news. If you want to pick up one of these, you should probably do it sooner rather than later if you live in the US, because 8BitDo announced that in response to the current trade war, they are no longer going to ship controllers or any products to the United States, and they will only be selling controllers until the ones that are already here in the warehouses are gone. After that, you won't be able to buy them here in the United States anymore. So I did put an affiliate link down below so that you can use now before they're all gone. And as of right now, while I record this, you can pick up one of these for just $30, which is a very good deal for this controller. I'm not going to pick one up myself because I already have the one that has the charging cradle, which I absolutely love. And I'll bet if 8BitDo is going to update the Ultimate 2C, then they'll probably also be updating the firmware for the Ultimate 2.4 GHz. And on top of that, once Valve has updated the UI for the 2C, I'll bet that most of the work will already have been done and will translate easily to the controller that I have. I'll also link down below the one that I have because it's fantastic, and I really like the ability to just drop it in a cradle and have it automatically charged, so every time I pick it up, the battery is full. But 8BitDo is not the only one currently experiencing issues due to the trade war. PlayStation recently raised the price of PS5 in Europe in response to tariffs in the US, basically punishing Europeans for American politics. Xbox just raised their prices everywhere on hardware, and they also raised prices on software following Nintendo's lead, and Ambernick just stopped shipping to the US, just like 8BitDo did. All around, this sucks. Nintendo, I have to say, well done. This is one of the most pro-consumer moves that I have seen Nintendo do in modern history. Nintendo recently updated how games are shared on the Switch and the upcoming Switch 2. And we already knew about this feature, but now that it's out, the patch notes have showed us something that we didn't know before, which makes this new feature even better. Although I can still see how some people might not like this new feature. I'm a big critic of Nintendo. I've also been a huge supporter of Nintendo. I even had a Nintendo-focused podcast for years. It was called Nintendo Switchcraft. It was nominated for awards and everything. I say this not to brag, but to point out that I'm not a Nintendo hater like most people assume. I am critical of them, but I think it's important that I am critical of any company that does things that I don't like. I also think it's just as important to praise companies when they do something that I think is good. No company does all bad things or does all good things. Nobody's evil and nobody's infallible. I found this news over on our NerdNest community Discord. Community member Orange Thunder posted this tweet from Wario64, which shows that Nintendo is going to allow you to share DLC through their new virtual game card system. For those of you that missed this news, Nintendo recently put out an update to the Switch 1 in preparation for the Switch 2 launch in June. As part of that update, they updated the way that we share digital games with other people, much like Steam Family Sharing. Nintendo's old way of doing family sharing was that you would denote one of your consoles as a primary console which didn't need to check in on the internet, and then another console as a secondary console that needed to be able to connect to the internet in order to play games. My issue with this is that if you use this method, you're logging into somebody else's console, and personally, I don't like that idea. The new way of doing this is you bring the two consoles near each other, and then you can digitally eject a game from one system and then digitally load games from that system onto another system, just like you would with a physical cartridge. The two systems can't play the same games at the same time, but it allows you to share your games easily between the two systems. Perhaps you have a Switch and a Switch Lite, for instance. But Nintendo's new system improves family sharing, as now you can lend games to other people in your Nintendo family group. The way that it works is you connect your family group members via local wireless, and you just have to be near each other, and you have to be connected to the internet. Then you can lend one game per account for 2 weeks. After that, the game automatically goes back to the main user, and during that 2 weeks, no one has to be connected to the internet in order for this to work, which is really important for a console that won't always have an internet connection, like a portable system like the Switch. Of course, I do think it's important to point out that there are lots of people that prefer the old way, and they're calling this a downgrade. But I would say that I always felt like that old way of doing things was a loophole rather than the way that they wanted things to work. And I was always kind of waiting for that way of things to get patched out. I do admit that this is more restrictive, but this is now the official way to share digital games, so you can do so without worrying that your account will get banned or something like that. Not that anyone has actually been banned for the old loophole, at least not as far as I know, but it was always something that was at the back of my mind as something that could happen. I will say I do still prefer Steam Family Sharing, which also allows you to share DLC. Up until recently, Valve's Steam family sharing was either better or worse depending on who you talk to. The way that it used to work was region-free, so Valve didn't really care where you were playing from, but it was also very limited because if somebody was playing a game from my library and then I started playing not even the same game but another game from my library, they would get kicked out of the game that they were playing even if we were playing two different games. Last year, Valve updated Steam family sharing and made it more like trying to share a physical library of games that were sitting on a shelf in your house. Essentially, everyone in a Steam family could pull any game off of the shelf with parental controls built in, of course, and then they could play that game. Two people can't play the game at the same time unless there are two copies in the library, just like how it works in the real world. In order to get publishers to go along with this model, they had to restrict Steam family to being in the same geographical location, which is reasonable as most people live in the same country as their families. Now, that doesn't mean that it works perfectly for everyone, but I do think it, covers most use cases for people. I personally vastly prefer the new system of family sharing, and I think that Nintendo looked at it and said, we could do something like this to encourage multiple Nintendo Switch systems per household. Did you know that Respawn was working on Titanfall 3? That's the rumor anyway. The most important word in that sentence is was, because according to the rumors, it has been canceled. And there's a big shakeup over at EA. I never finished Titanfall 2, but I was a very big fan of Apex Legends, mostly because of the way you traverse the environment in that game. So when I picked up Titanfall 2, which I can't remember how I got it, either it was part of a Humble bundle or it was a really steep Steam sale, or maybe it was part of Humble Choice, which is a subscription service where you get a bunch of games each month that are yours to keep, even if you quit Humble Bundle. I have an affiliate link down below if you're interested. But anyway, when I picked up Titanfall 2, I realized that the movement felt very much like Apex, but better, and I was really impressed. And even though I never finished Titanfall 2, I was very much hoping for Titanfall 3 so that I could play it at the same time as everybody else since I missed out on it the first time around. I don't think I'd even heard of them before I'd played Apex. So what's going on with Titanfall 3? Well, despite the critical success of Titanfall 2, the game failed to meet EA's expectations. EA expected it to sell around 9 to 10 million copies, but it only sold about 4 million copies. I think this is because it was a first-person shooter that released really close to a new Battlefield game and a new Call of Duty game, and it just kind of got overshadowed by those two huge juggernauts. Titanfall 3 was apparently an extraction shooter named R7. I don't know how I feel about the idea of it being an extraction shooter, which is generally pretty unforgiving kind of game, especially if you're not playing it all the time. But I'm also not a huge fan of Battle Royale games, and I had a blast playing Apex Legends, which has all of those same traversal mechanics. I think I probably would have had a lot of fun in Titanfall 3. There are conflicting reports as to how far along Titanfall 3 was, with some saying that they have sources that it was almost done and others saying it wasn't shipping anytime soon. I guess it could be almost done, but not shipping soon due to reasons other than how complete the game was. But at this point, I guess it's irrelevant because the game is toast, and that sucks. The bad news doesn't stop with Titanfall 3 getting canceled though, because it also comes along with EA firing 300 to 400 devs and Respawn itself losing 100 people, according to an article from Bloomberg. It sucks that these companies are constantly seeing record profits, yet laying off employees to constantly chase infinite revenue growth, because we are not their customers. Their customers are the stock market and investors. Essentially, the video game industry is screwed at this point. But you know who's not screwed? All of the awesome people that support the NerdNest. You can see them right here on screen now. And you can check out the latest episode of my podcast here. Or if you want to watch some Steam input tutorials, they're linked down below that like button. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching and stay rad.